Hello, welcome to United Democratic Women's third Facebook Live event. And tonight our topic is Know Your SOS, which stands for Secretary of the State. I'd like to introduce the President of the United Democratic Women, Carol Comito. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Good evening, members and guests. We're happy to bring you this Facebook Live event, and we're really excited about the ones we've already done. So when you have a chance, please check them out on our Facebook page. As Liz mentioned, this is a series of topics that are part of our mission and goals to elect Democratic women to Congress and to bring you important information on our top goals that affect women's rights. Tonight, our speakers will talk about the responsibilities of being Secretary of State and voting rights. Our first speaker will be the Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs. She's Secretary of State of Arizona, and she is running for governor. So I've had the opportunity to be friends with Katie pretty much most of her political career, and I'm excited to have her here tonight now that I'm in DC. And our other speaker will be Phyllis Hatcher. And Phyllis is running for Congress in Georgia, another very important state. And she is a new friend and a new member to UDW. So with that, I'd like to start with Katie. So Katie, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much, Carol. And thank you, United Democratic Women, for having me here tonight. And as Carol said, I am the Secretary of State for Arizona. I was elected to that role in 2018, started serving in 2019, and before that served 8 years in our state's legislature, 4 of those as the Senate Minority Leader. So many times over the last year, I have been asked, did you ever think when you ran for Secretary of State that this is what it would be like? And I have told every single reporter, if anyone answers that question and says yes, I want to know who they are because they're not telling the truth. The truth is that Secretaries of State over the last year have been spotlighted in a way that was never anticipated. If we do our jobs well, nobody knows who we are or what we do, and that's the way it should be. Elections are a highly administrative function. And, most of that is behind the scenes, and we have systems in place, and most voters can rest assured that their election officials, whether they're elected or appointed, are administering those functions according to the laws of their state, and that those systems are secure and fair. And that's what I walked into the Secretary of State's office wanting to make sure that voters had confidence in. I inherited an office that was pretty mismanaged. And so we had a lot of work to do to restore voters' trust in those systems, and not just elections. And this varies by state. Every Secretary of State has different duties. Not every state has a Secretary of State, but in Arizona, we oversee elections. We also administer the state's library, archives, and public records, the Capitol Museum, business services, and our state's address confidentiality program. But I think that elections is the most public-facing thing that we do, and obviously has such dire consequences for our democracy. So it really has been 2020 and its aftermath in terms of elections have been really an opportunity for folks to understand the role of Secretary of State, which I think is fantastic. But we've also had to stand as the guardians of our democracy in ways that I don't think anyone ever anticipated. We've seen a full-on assault on our democracy from all different fronts. But what we're seeing from the work of the congressional committees is that a lot of these assaults have been coordinated at higher levels than we first thought. And so these attempts to continue pouring misinformation into our elections and the election results to undermine voters' confidence in the systems, to then push legislation that is in the name of election security, but actually only serves to make it harder for voters to exercise their freedom to vote. these continued election subversion activities, like the so-called audit that we saw in Arizona and other states are trying to bring an Arizona-style audit to their states, which doesn't actually do anything to audit or bolster confidence in election results. And continued threats on election officials. These are the challenges that we face. These are the coordinated attack we're seeing. And I think, you know, all of these point to voting rights being under assault in ways that we have worked for many years to try to increase access to voting. And we're seeing that reversed by these actions in the states and state legislatures, but then also a Supreme Court that has shown they're not willing to uphold key provisions of the Voting Rights Act that ensure equal access to voting across our country. So I just will give you a few examples of some of the things that we're seeing in Arizona. I know my time's very limited, but we're seeing attempts to continue to sow doubt in our democracy, to remove early voting as we know it in Arizona. And Arizona has been a no excuse early voting state for a long time. People want to eliminate, they're trying to eliminate voting by mail. They're trying to limit access to secure ballot drop boxes and other forms of early voting. They want to do away with tabulation machines, which would not only make tabulating results much more lengthy and difficult, but also less accurate. And also increase the penalty for violation of any rules and procedures related to elections, even if that violation is accidental. So we're seeing all kinds of these assaults in this year's legislative session that could very well impact the outcome of the 2022 elections in Arizona and in other states across the country as well. And I'll just end by saying one other piece of this assault on our democracy that we're seeing is folks who have actively participated in these attacks on our democracy have actively spread the big lie that the 2020 election was fraudulent, running and seeking higher office, either in the legislature as secretaries of state, as governors. And the outcomes of these elections could very well determine the future of free and fair elections in our country. And so it's so important that we continue to stay vigilant, that we are working to fight these bills and making sure that folks know what's at stake in the 2022 election, no matter what state you're in. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Katie. And now Phyllis.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for inviting me to come on to share a little bit about what Georgia does for the Secretary of State. Katie has pretty much.
Sorry.
Okay, is that okay now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Katie has actually went over a lot of things that Georgia does also in the Secretary of State, but I do want to point out some things that that we do. As you all know, that Brad Raffensperger is our Chief of Staff here for the Secretary of State. And I'm going to talk a little bit about him later. But what we do is here, we maintain our business filings. We implement electronic filings and internet disclosures for campaign and lobbyists. And the Georgia of State registers voters. We track the annual corporate filing, the grants, professional licensings, and oversees the state's security markets. But what I wanted to talk about with Brad Raffensperger, I'm sure that you all have heard about him in regards to the election that we have for the Biden and Trump's race, where he was asked to find these 11,000 votes here in Georgia for Trump to actually win for president, and thank God he did not find them. There was an article today that came out that he talked about this new voting bill that our state House and state Senate had passed, simply because Georgia, we're still considered a purple state. We're actually head in blue, but we're kind of like purple, and that our Republican House and Senate are still Republicans, and they actually rules. And this Senate Bill 202 that we had to come through from the Secretary of State office kind of like put us in a bad era in regards to our voting rights. So with that being said, it was told that during our time for the election for the Secretary of State that that they will be changing the absentee ballot time. It's only 11 days cut off now for, before the election date. They have taken up the ballot boxes that we have here to make voting easier for the citizens. They have put into law that it's against the law to actually pass out water in voting lines, which is really crazy. I don't understand this concept of that. But when I read today in the paper, Brad had stated, and I quote, that the reason why they are stopping people from giving out the water in the lines because the candidates or the volunteers are wearing the candidates' shirts. So it gives them an idea on who to vote for, which is ludicrous to me. So we're actually still fighting. We have a couple of candidates here that are actually running for Brad's seat because we know that in this 2022 election will not be fair because they have purged over 150,000 voters off the roll here in Georgia. They are afraid that we're going to take the state from the Congress seat all the way down, from the governor to the lieutenant governor, all the way down state race wide. So we are actually, fighting here in Georgia to have a great Secretary of State because we know that we cannot trust Brad, even though that he may not be Trump's boy, but at the same time, we know that we got to get rid of him. I did not know that the salary for the Secretary of State was only $17,342. That was a shocker for me, for the state of Georgia to know that. And so Katie, I don't know what this salary is in Arizona, but that was really a shocker to know that they're only making $17,342 here. Let's see here. I think that's pretty much all, what the Secretary of State does here in Georgia. But the main thing is that we want to make sure that our voting rights are protected. We know that we got to get somebody in the seat that will protect our voting rights. There's a lot of stuff that's going on here in the state of Georgia. So that's pretty much it. Katie pretty much did the legal just part of it because I'm sure that all of the states pretty much run halfway the same. But in Georgia, we are actually fighting to make sure that we have great voting rights because there have been so many different bills passed to keep us from having our voting rights here in Georgia. So let's see, just to give y'all just some general knowledge. Our nickname here for Georgia is called the Peach State. The Secretary's motto is wisdom, justice, and moderation. I don't believe all of that, but that's okay. That's what they say. That they say that they are wise and they're justice, and no, that's not it. And then our song is Georgia on Your Mind by, I know who, Ray Charles. And then our state seal is the Georgia Secretary of State, and our Attorney General is Chris Carr. So we got a lot of work here to do. So if you all know anyone that lives here in Georgia, tell them to just make sure that they check their voting rights. I mean, there are voting precincts, because here in Georgia, we have had our lines redrawn. We are all over the place. They have made it so where on voting day, we don't know where we're going. So we're trying to educate people across the state of Georgia to make sure that on voting day, that you have your ID. Yeah, that's another thing that I want to mention. Now on the absentee ballots, they are requiring that you have your ID to send with the application in order to receive your ballot back to vote. And then not only that, you cannot take more, look, you can only take your absentee ballot to the election. You cannot take mine and my husband's and my child's ballot back. It's against the law, or you will be locked up for it. It will be, it is a felony to do that. So please don't do that. And so it's really making it harder for the seniors, because we have a lot of seniors here that are not able to get out to vote, but they are voting absentee ballots. So how they're able to leave the nursing home to go and put their ballot in a box. So they're saying that we can't do it. They have to do that themselves. So they're just kind of like just making it real hard here in Georgia was to turn blue, because as you all know that we did elect Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff, and we got Cinnamon over there in Arizona acting kind of crazy, Katie, so you probably need to get on her about that. But that's okay. But so that's what we are. We're going to continue to fight here in Georgia, continue to make sure we have our voting rights, and we're going to get rid of Brad Raffensperger. And thank you, Kara, and thank you, Alice and Miss Liz, for this opportunity to speak about Secretary of State. And I am a candidate for Congress here in Georgia, which is Congressional seat District 10.
Thank you, Phyllis. We appreciate that. And thank you, Katie. And both of our speakers are running for office. As Phyllis said, she's running for Congress in Georgia. Katie's running for governor in Arizona, and we wish them a lot of luck. And now we're going to bring on Alice Love, who's our corresponding secretary for United Democratic Women, to talk a little bit about Secretary of State's position in general. Alice? You're muted, Alice.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you so much for having this discussion today. I didn't realize that the Secretary of State has such great power, because it is that person who looks at the ballots that was voted on that day, and he can decide if that is something is wrong with it, throw it out, or whatever. So the Secretary of State is responsible for handling the executive functions. There are 27 candidates running for the Secretary of State in 18 of our states. And most of them have already put their papers, primary papers in, and their deadlines are going to start in March. So I would suggest to everyone that they understand the importance of the duties of the Secretary of State, because sometimes that is the position that will decide if those votes are accurate. If nothing is wrong with them, then they will let them go. But it was Georgia who really put our attention to what the Secretary of State is. Now, I understand that the Secretaries of State, they're appointed by the voters. So when you look at your ballot, their name is going to be on there. And if you're not familiar with those people, then you need to be, because it's not appointed by the governor. Only a few of the states are appointed by the governor. And the Secretary of State, these are these Republicans who want to put in the seats to change everything about the voting. We know that our voting is very important, and it's going to be a big deciding factor. Who gets to be your governor, who gets to be your mayor, and so forth. So really, we need to pay attention to who's going to be on that ballot. Let me just say that there are 24 Republicans who have questioned or disputed the 2020 election. And they are running, at least 21 of them are running for Secretary of State in those 18 states. I'll give you some example of some of the states that they're running in. Excuse me, I'm looking on two computers. My printer stopped working on me. 27 of those states that are holding election in Secretary of State: Alabama, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Massachusetts, Michigan, North Dakota, Ohio, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Vermont, Washington, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. You can gather from those lists of states who are really usually red states, and they want to make sure that their Secretary of State are the ones who will control what is happening with the ballots. I want all of us all citizens to understand the role of the Secretary of State and who is running. Their name is going to be on the ballot. So I don't know, Phyllis, would it be before the voting that they will have a list, or Katie, maybe you know, who the names of those Secretary of States, and you can learn who they are and what they're all about. This is a very important, because as you both stated, it's all about who's going to be able to count the ballots, who's going to be able to be elected, and if they will be successful in getting what we're going to do with our voting that comes in 2022 and our general election in 2024. I will be submitting a list of this again, of these states that has the Secretary of State's running, and their deadlines for their primary candidates. And they really start in March. So I would suggest that we all tune ourselves into who will be running for that position. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. That was great. And Katie's given us a resource as well, so we'll make sure we share that if people aren't already seeing it. And Liz, I guess do we have anyone else to speak? If not, I guess I'll make a few closing remarks. Does that sound right, Liz?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We hope you enjoyed this program, because we're going to be continuing to do these programs, and we want to keep you informed. Please like us on Facebook if you haven't already. If you're not already a member, please go to our website and join. We would love to have you with us. So that you know, in March, on March 14th, that will be our next Facebook Live event. And that's going to be Carol Jenkins, who is the CEO for the ERA Coalition. And we've been working very closely with them. And as I'm sure most of you know, the ERA is so important. There's so many things going on right now with the ERA. So we hope you'll tune in, and we hope that you will support anything that we send out regarding the ERA. So thank you for being with us tonight. Stay in touch. If you have any questions, please let us know. And we appreciate all of our speakers tonight. And that would be Katie Hobbs, who is the current Secretary of State in Arizona, running for governor. Good luck, Katie. Phyllis Hatcher, who is running for Congress in Georgia. And Phyllis has a tremendous background, so take some time to read about Phyllis. And Alice Love, our Corresponding Secretary for United Democratic Women. We thank all of you, and we hope you all have a good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.